For those of you that aren't familiar, a very traditional clinical trial is all predicated around investigator sites and the ability for patients as participants to travel back and forth to those sites for various visits during their study. We know that that represents very often a burden for many patients, and that's presented this opportunity for what we're calling decentralized trials, which in truth are really just a collection of different methods, tools, technologies, and new processes that we're able to introduce in studies in a smart and organized way with the purpose of sparing some or even all of those visits from having to take place in a traditional research site setting. In doing so, the patient can participate more from home, they can participate from their doctor's office, their retail pharmacy, or whatever other location is right for them.
Great, awesome.
Well, I think as you're hearing, there's a whole host of these decentralized research tools that were rapidly adopted. None of them needed to be invented last year. They were always available. They just sat at people's doorsteps. And last year, the research community stepped up and fully embraced, with the support of regulators, investigators, patients, and caregivers, whether, as was mentioned, whether digital tools to support electronic informed consent, video visits, self-reporting of data, self-tracking, and other wearable data, whether it was process shifts, as Jamie was mentioning, the ability to get drug supply to people in their home, or to administer protein therapeutics in someone's home, or to support blood draws and imaging to be done locally. All of that is now sitting in this decentralized clinical trial toolkit that most in industry seem to be embracing and committing to. We're seeing large research organizations, pharma and CROs that have reviewed and modified their existing SOPs and training, their study protocol templates. And so we're certainly seeing a significant commitment in this area. Certainly from the sponsors and CROs, the tech community has been there ready and waiting. And the regulators, in many cases, are signaling clarity and support. Unfortunately, that's not consistent globally right now. Here, the research community has had this buzz phrase for a while of clinical research as a care option. Unfortunately, only the research community uses that phrase. Nobody in the rest of healthcare is even aware that we're all aspiring on our side of the fence to break this wall and make research more consistently available as a care option. But we realize that today, research as a care option, in particular in this country, is predicated on serendipity. That you as a patient happen to go to a physician who happens to be an investigator in a trial that happens to be right for you. And so when we see the approaches of using data in better and smarter ways to find people who may be eligible, in the past we've still struggled with that last mile, because unless that person's doctor happened to be an investigator in the trial, it was really hard and the incentives were misaligned. The adoption of decentralized is actually starting to show us models to break through that barrier, that we can have an investigator in one place and the treating physician in the community somewhere else, and that treating physician doesn't have to feel threatened by patient leakage and patient loss as they have in the past. That other investigator on the video screen is not necessarily there to take their patient away from them. And so I think that with the adoption of decentralized coming out of the pandemic, some of our opportunities to make better use of data to find and engage people, we're going to finally start to be able to really realize in terms of actual enrollment of people in trials. But Vera, I think your point earlier about the importance of long-term follow-up data, vaccines aside, most of our drug development pipeline are in small populations. Pharma and biotech and rare diseases and oncology, as Jamie was mentioning, these small populations that we're enrolling in a clinical trial are precious. And when a study traditionally ends at last patient, last visit, that's the end until these new models now that are starting to emerge. Our ability to keep a connection with a patient who is in some of our studies, allow them to opt in to stay connected, allow them to share their data, allow them to give us permission to link and connect their data for a long-term follow-up. When we're thinking about cell and gene therapy, when we're thinking about other rare disease areas, is tremendous. It's vital. If we didn't have that type of a solution available, we would have to run incredibly long and cost-prohibitive long-term safety follow-up studies in a very traditional way. so traditional and so expensive that it would be a huge disincentive for drug companies to pursue some of these medicines that they're pursuing today. This is in an inclusive and transparent way. These are people who are consenting to participate in prospective research, which is an incredibly unique opportunity to have a permissioned model to link their data.